Welcome to the Intentional Leader Podcast presented by Renogize Professional Coaching. We appreciate you listening in and learning with us. The stories and leadership tips you hear will help you become a great leader. Listen intentionally. Now, to our host, Sean Olson.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast. This is the podcast where you hear the real stories of people just like you who become extraordinary leaders. You'll learn valuable tips from their lives, tips that you can apply to become the best leader that you were created to be. When leaders are intentional, lives are changed. I'm Sean Olson, your host. I am an author, speaker, business owner, and obviously podcast host. We're glad to have you here today. And before we get rolling on today's episode, I want to ask you to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave some comments, and help all those algorithms out there in the world love what we're doing here. We are glad you're here today. I am pleased to introduce my guest, Keith Scott. Keith is the CEO of KL Scott and Associates. You'll learn about what that is today. Keith, welcome to the Intentional Leader Podcast. It's great to have you.
Great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and looking forward to our fluid discussion today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. So listeners, Keith and I met earlier back in 2024 at a conference in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the International City and County Manager Conference. And we hit it off right away. And even literally that day we met, I think that was back in like October or September. We're like, we need to be on the podcast together. So Keith, it's great to have you. We open up every episode with the same question. Kind of walk us through your professional life, but even more than that, leadership lessons learned along the way.
Yes. So I have a 30-year plus career in technology and management consulting. And even from a young teenager, I said, you know what, I kind of want my own business, and trying to figure out, how to make that happen. And when you're young, you don't have the benefit of experience and the look of wisdom because you don't have gray hair, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of began my career, working independently, but then I went into Deloitte Consulting. And really, Deloitte Consulting was really the game changer for me in my career. I learned from some of the best partners on leadership, some of the best managers and senior managers, had some great experience there. And I really, it's like a second MBA for me. I took lessons from that organization and another consulting company that I worked for as an associate partner at Gartner, and took both of those lessons from those great consulting companies and then launched into my own firm. And what I've been able to do over the last, decade or so is really hone in on, government and really and driving outcomes, positive outcomes for local communities, statewide services, and then even the federal government as well. So that's been my journey. It's been a great time.
Awesome. So let's jump back. So, we've all heard about like the big four consulting firms. You were part of that. And those firms are massive and, they churn through. And it's one of those jokes out there that if you've ever worked at one of those, you learned a lot, but you didn't stay there that long, right? Because they seem to burn at both ends and such like that. But what are like the two biggest leadership lessons you learned working at Deloitte?
Well, I would tell you, working through your team, right? Prior to that, I tried to do everything myself. And you realize trusting in your team, giving them clear direction and expectation of outcome, you can drive, your initiative forward. And I saw how a few specific leaders did that as a partner at Deloitte. What they were able to do is manage multiple, teams, multiple clients, and there's no way you could do that by yourself. So they were able to put the right people as the point of contact and then trust those individuals to bring in the right understudies to help them drive their outcomes.
Yeah, I love the three elements you talked about there. You talked about the trust aspect, right? You have to trust and know, otherwise you're not going to really get the benefit of having a team around you.
Right.
But then you talked about the clear direction. And I
Mhm.
really love the expectation of what the outcome is going to be.
Mhm.
Because when I look at people leading teams today, those three different elements of trust, clear direction, desired outcomes, it seems like we're always lacking in one or two of
Yeah.
those.
Yeah.
And we end up blaming the team
Yeah.
when it's really not the team that's at fault. It's the
Yeah.
leader.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And even with, the team that I manage with my firm, I have leaders in place. And if they come back to me with feedback on one of their staff members, I first start, well, what did you tell them? What were they thinking? Did you confirm it? Um, did you align expectations? You have to communicate clear outcomes. So I would add communication is the most important thing,
Yeah.
and then even checking in on the progress, not to the point of micromanaging, right?
Hmm.
But getting to a point where you have these stage gates that you can reconvene and have those discussions so that you can make sure that they're driving the outcomes that you're expecting.
Yeah. That's a good point you brought out because I was going to ask you about that. So, if we are very articulate with the desired outcomes,
Hmm.
it's natural for a lot of leaders to go to the next step of almost dictating how they get there.
Right.
So,
Right.
where's that line between here's the desired outcome, but then giving freedom, accountability, and responsibility for those people to actually get there?
So I thoroughly believe that you put people in place because they have to deliver. You can't duplicate yourself by cloning yourself. That's just not going to happen. At least not right now. Maybe in the future we'll see.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to delegate various things and then trust them. That's the only way to scale, right? You have to do that. So the benefit of being a good communicator, you'll see the most successful businesses, managers, leaders of any form are great communicators. They clearly not just communicate the vision, but confirm that who they're speaking with understands and comprehends what your expectations are. Because
Hmm.
the gap between the two is where the pain is, where the
Yeah.
arguments, the disappointments are. So that clear confirmation, visioning, and clear confirmation that they understand the vision is key.
So let's make this practical for our listeners. I love what you just shared there, especially the aspect of them truly understanding our expectations, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
How do I, as the leader, know that they understand my expectations? What's that communication cycle like?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So my style, and
Hmm.
it's worked for me, is after speaking and clearly articulating what I believe the outcome should be in my vision, I ask them in their words, can you communicate back to me what I just said? That's where the confirmation is, right?
Hmm.
So if they can articulate back to you your expectation and you sign off on it, you have connected. And now
Yeah.
you should be able to move forward.
Yeah. I love that because it also helps us learn and grow, right?
Absolutely.
Because if
Absolutely.
they don't share back what we actually said, it may be that they're not listening well, or we need to change our language with them. It may be, as a leader, this is hard for us to admit, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not sharing my expectations that well. Maybe
Yeah.
I need to grow in how I'm communicating. So there's learning on both sides in that.
Yeah. And then it's also knowing that everybody receives information through a different channel,
Mhm.
right? The one
Mhm.
thing I learned about having younger children is they
Mhm.
communicate to me through text messaging,
Yeah.
which I hate, right? I'm still old school. I still like picking up the phone,
Yeah.
conversing that way, because through a text or through an email, uh, context or tone can be misunderstood, right? You can actually exacerbate a problem by
Mhm.
choosing that to channel to communicate. So what I like to do is if I'm not clear on someone's tone or the context of what we're discussing, I just call them on the phone.
Yeah.
When it comes to those that choose email and text messaging,
Mhm.
but I always prefer face to face
Yeah.
or conversing over a phone.
I agree. It's funny. We had this conversation with some people the other day that they don't call because they think it's a time issue, right? It's,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't have time for a 5-minute conversation. What
mhm,
they don't realize is because they've been going via text and email and there's miscommunication of
mhm,
motives and thoughts and
yeah,
process, they end up burning 20 to 30 minutes
exactly.
if not more, when the 5-minute conversation could have resolved the whole situation.
Exactly. It's the total
Yeah.
cost of ownership, right? I mean, you got to really factor in the fact that you may you may just want to touch on a topic
Hmm.
if you have to do it through text or email and say, hey, let's get together and flush this out, discuss this further. That's a better method than trying to communicate via email when you need more context, right? Um, you know that's we're losing because social media is great in a lot of aspects, but the human to human connection in terms of leadership, that's
Yeah,
being lost. So that is a concern. We have to
it is.
still shake hands, look eye to eye, and then
Yep.
even whiteboard things in person, right? I do
Yeah.
believe in digital channels, but at the end of the day, you gotta have that in
No,
person.
I love to hear you say that too, because, with the advancement of AI, and I'll
Hmm.
even make a generic phrase of automations, not just the artificial intelligence, but automation.
Right.
People are always wondering how many jobs are going to be lost because of AI and automation. How does leadership play into it? And I even know, like in the realm that I'm in, was an executive coach and owned an executive coaching firm. There's a lot of companies now that are doing app-driven coaching and AI and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awesome, but it's
Hmm.
a supplement to human connection. It's not a
Right.
replacement of it.
Right.
And the organizations, the companies in the US, the companies globally that keep the human connection in place and truly leading person to person are the
Hmm.
ones that are going to excel and win in the end.
I agree with you because, especially in the social services world, where public
Yeah.
service really needs to understand the community, the citizen,
Hmm.
or the community. What has to happen is the empathetic aspect of AI is not there, right?
Hmm.
You have to have that when you're dealing with people. Removing that and just think that everything is automated, structured through an algorithm, I think you're going to miss a lot.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, that's where things are going. But I don't think AI is going to really replace uh, human connection. I don't believe it's going to replace jobs. It will change jobs. It
Hmm.
will be a companion and
Yep.
a kind of a side by side assistant, if you will. And I think we need to re-engineer how we're looking at that from a leadership perspective as well.
I agree. Yeah. I have people ask me all the time, what's the big benefit of AI with leadership? And I
Hmm.
think it really boils down to two things. It does create efficiency. I can
It
get
does.
more and better information faster,
Right.
but that information then allows me to make better decisions
Right.
more rapidly. So I think
Right.
the efficiency and quality decision making is
Right.
monstrous with AI and
That's the
leadership.
companion part. That's the companion
Yeah,
part.
but
Yeah.
it's not about the people.
Right.
And
Exactly.
leadership is about people. We manage processes, we lead people. They are not the same thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
awesome. Well, let's dive into Kale Associates here for a minute, Kale Scott Associates. And for my listeners, I want to say this really quick. We're going to kind of, in some ways, talk about city government, county government, federal government. And you may be thinking, I'm not a part of that. This doesn't apply to you. It does,
Yes.
because city, county, and federal government impacts you every single day in your business. And I want you to also to realize, as we're having this conversation, how they're actually your partners are going to help you excel. So
Yes.
listen in on this as a benefit. But to start off, just tell us, what is KL Scott and Associates doing in the realm of IT and management?
Yes. So we are helping local, state, and federal government with strategic planning around community engagement, around workforce development, around citizen experience, and modernization of technology. We've just launched a new service offering through AI strategy, where we're helping government leaders drive artificial intelligence through a responsible and ethical methodology, so that representation is in the data sets and the data models as they're being built, and in compliance. We are helping with public policy around health and social services. So we have over 15 clients that we're engaged with right now at each level of government. We're really driving a lot of the civic work through our company. We founded the company in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
We started off mainly being business process optimization,
Mhm.
organizational efficiency, which kind of for the 360 degree with the new administration, that's really their focus, right? Cost
Right.
optimization, smart government, efficient government, and then there's a change management component to that. So we're going to be aligning our work to the new administration in that regard so that we can support those outcomes. Um, but yeah, we've worked with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, CDC, USDA, HUD, a lot of different organizations.
Good, good. So this is the Intentional Leader podcast. We
Right.
think that everything in leadership needs to be intentional.
Hmm.
So with those governmental clients that you have, put on the leadership hat for a minute.
Hmm.
What are you seeing that they're doing really well to help lead in their communities, to impact their communities? Because honestly, quite often as citizens, we don't even recognize what they're doing. So let's kind of bring that out. What are they doing to lead well in their organizations and their community?
Well, right now we're getting past post COVID. Now I'm speaking locally and state
Yep.
wise. Getting past post COVID. So there's a lot of funds that were given to states to help improve and modernize their systems. That's not an undertaking that happens, overnight, right? It takes time to replace a system. It can be two, depending on the complexity, it could be 2 to 3, possibly 4 years to do so. So, what I've seen government leaders do very well is drive these outcomes with scarce resources. So, what governments are facing now is a retiring workforce that will be retiring a third of the workforce in government, and that scales top down, will be
Wow.
retiring in the next 5 years. So, there's institutional knowledge that will be leaving. So there's some
Mhm.
change management work that needs to be done. So they've been proactive in working with organizations such as ours in helping put in systems for succession planning, helping identify the right modernization of technology that will benefit the majority of citizens. So when we work with government agencies and government leaders, we understand that there's a broad range of age groups that interact with the city or state or federal government differently. My mother, who's in her 80s, will
Mhm.
not be using a mobile phone to pay her taxes, right?
Right.
But my sons, who are 22 and 21, that's all they do, right? So how,
Yeah.
as a government leader, address each one of those personas? So we've seen acceptance of that transition, that transformation, and we're definitely there to support that process.
Yeah, I love that. And the retirement thing's huge. Where I'll give local and state government a lot of praise
Hmm.
is those government employees are loyal. They've been there for
Absolutely, absolutely,
a
and they
long time.
care.
And so,
Yeah,
say it again.
and they care. They really
Yeah,
care. Yeah,
they do.
yeah,
They do. Because in some senses, it's almost a thankless job, right? The
yeah,
citizens in most communities, when things are going great, don't think about their government.
yeah,
When things aren't going great, they blame their government.
yeah.
But really, they're there to make it consistent, and they really care. And it's been fun for us as an organization at Energize Professional Coaching. We work with a lot of city governments,
Hmm.
and that's the one thread that goes all the way through. That is, we'll ask, "Why are you here? Why do you work
Right,
here?" And it's not like, if they're in public works, it's not like because I love doing sewers and things
right,
like that. It's
right,
I love my community and I want to impact
right,
it. And they
right.
literally, like, if they're in public works working in sewers, they literally think, if Keith's toilet's flush and he
Hmm.
never has to worry about it, I'm
Hmm.
happy.
Yes,
And that's
yes,
such an incredible mentality, right?
yes, yes.
And now though they're retiring.
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to acknowledge, like, right now, I don't know when this is going to be broadcasted, but the fires that are going on
Yeah.
in California, the first responders risking their lives to save communities, right? I mean, this
Mhm.
is the type of people that join public service. They really
Yep.
care about the communities, and for that reason, that's why we formed our firm so we can support them in supporting the communities.
Yeah. So what gave you that desire though? I love that phrase, right? That you want
Yeah.
to support them. How was that desire born in you to go out with KL Scott and Associates?
That's a very good question. I'll be honest with you. I saw a lot of disparities in resources across the country, whether it's in the Appalachians of North Carolina, where they don't have high speed internet, which puts them at a disadvantage when it comes to competing economically or getting education from the inner cities that have high crime rates because they don't have job opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I really kind of coined the phrase of your zip code should not determine your outcome. So
Yep.
that is really the motivation on why I started the company, why I wake up every day to help and drive our firm to success, and because our success means the community's success. That is really it, to provide access to resources so that you can have a better outcome, better life, better opportunity, and that is really the driving force behind it.
Yeah, I love that. So my assumption is I'm going to transition a little bit about KL
Mhm.
Scott in the sense of a lot of our listeners are solopreneurs, small
Sure.
business owners. I put my firm in that boat. Your firm is growing, but still kind of in that boat, big
Mhm.
picture.
Mhm.
How are you growing, hiring people that have that same heart that you have?
Yeah, that is a very good question too. So we have 3 rounds of interviews, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's various things. But initially, our first point of contact is, you know, what is your mission? What is your life purpose? What do you see yourself doing, right? And that really shows whether they are a culture fit,
Yeah.
right? Because everyone that has joined our firm has a deep rooted desire to help communities across the country.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Everyone has seen communities go and degrade over time, um, and really helping support this. So we take a lot of folks that were from the public service into our firm, so because they're the ones that understand
Mm.
what the government administrators go through, and
Yeah.
we build them a consulting lens to help support the governments. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. When I met you at that conference,
Mhm.
you had 3 or 4 other colleagues there with you, and I actually met them before I met you
Yeah.
uh, at the booth and such. And one of the things I appreciated about them was they they really felt like K.L. Scott and Associates was their company,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
They're not owners, but they felt it was their company, that they had a stake in the game. They
Yeah.
were adding value. They felt that they were really a part of a vibrant team. And I know you've been intentional with that. So
Yeah.
just talk for a minute about how you've really built that team aspect where they feel like we own this. It has your name behind it,
Yeah.
but it's their company.
Well, everyone has a connection to something, right? So we have a big project that helps with childcare, right? So everyone has had to either take their kids to
Mm-hmm.
daycare or take have some type of schooling for their pre-K or K through 12. We try to personalize everyone's experience, because if you're a parent, you have experience with childcare system in some
Right.
regard, right? So imagine someone that can't provide childcare or get access to childcare, and the economic impacts it has for them.
Mm-hmm.
So we preach empathy throughout our company so
Yeah.
that we can put ourselves in the position of those who have less resources, right? And
Mm-hmm.
again, it's part of our vetting process.
Yeah.
So everyone believes that their work contributes to a better society. And that is
Mm-hmm.
really intentional throughout our company.
I like that. Here's what I like about that. Generically speaking, you are a project management IT consulting firm,
Correct.
but everything you've done in building your company is about empathy and care and people. And the
Hmm.
reason I want to point that out, listeners, is it doesn't matter what field your organization is in, what sector you're in, the actual work that you do,
Hmm.
we're still about people. Life is about people,
Yeah,
leadership is about people.
yeah,
And that's what makes a difference.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
what's on the horizon in 2025 for KL Scott and Associates?
We are really, we've stood up an innovation lab
Hmm.
internally. So now we're starting to toy around with some of the artificial intelligence product development that can help accelerate outcomes to actually be predictive in public service, so we can predict how a community is being serviced through their experience, through helping modernize technology, to making sure that there's representation in data, so that you can have accuracy in your decision intelligence. So that is one of the biggest investments that we've gone through. We're also helping. We've launched an acquisition support strategy support service, so that we can help optimize government acquisitions and purchases. So the new administration is about reducing costs and being efficient. So we're helping them really look at their contracts, help them in support of negotiating contracts, helping them look at the marketplace to see if there's a business case for the work that they're trying to support. So there's a lot of work around that. So we're really focused on strategic transformation, cost savings, and
I love it.
efficiency moving forward.
I love it. So I want to do one more thing before we wrap up today. You and I talked about this originally, but I think it's important for our listeners to hear this.
Mhm.
We live in a very polarized culture today in
Yeah,
America,
yeah,
and the polarization's in a number of different realms. It's very easy to simplistically look at it from the political basis, right? And the polarization of different things. You've used the phrase new administration a few times now. I know from our previous conversation the answer to this. This is why I want to ask you this. Help our listeners understand that what we see about polarization and what we hear from media and stuff like that isn't necessarily the truth of what's going on with the
yeah.
people who are actually executing as government leaders. So help our listeners see actually the commonality. And that as we go from administration to administration, it really isn't that different.
Yeah, I will say we all have families.
Yep.
We all want positive outcomes for those families. We have people that we care and love about. We want their safety. We want their health. Uh, those are things that bond all of us together.
Yeah.
No one wants to live in a community where they're at danger just by walking in their front step,
Mhm.
their doorstep. We want to make sure that if we go to the hospital, that we're treated fairly and get the right diagnosis so that we can have
Yeah.
a healthier outcome. These are things we want the good schools so that our children can compete in a global economy that we're
Yeah.
facing, right? We all want those things, and we're all connected, right?
Mhm.
I mean, this is the United States of America.
Yes.
We are very much connected. Our outcome, regardless of political affiliation, race, gender, and whatever segmentation you can create, we are in this together, right?
Yep.
So, with that said, let's use data to drive understanding, and not the political pundits that we see,
Yeah.
because they get paid on shock and awe, right?
Yep.
And that's how they make money. So the more
Yeah.
shock they can generate, that it feeds their pockets.
No, I love your perspective on that. I love the big picture of the fact that we are all family, right?
Mhm.
And the phrase I've used before is what I see and hear in the news is not what I see and hear on Friday
Right,
nights,
right,
right? When you
right.
go to the school, you go to the ball game,
Yeah,
we're all one. We're all a
yeah,
community. That's
yeah,
awesome. Well,
absolutely.
Keith, it's been awesome to have you. We finish every episode with the same question, and that question is a very practical piece. What
Mhm.
is something our listeners can intentionally do today to be a more effective leader?
I would say work on communication, and it's not just outward, it's inward. Listen more than you talk, right? You'll get better perspectives. You'll get different perspectives. You'll get a diverse perspective. And then you can work with almost anyone if you try to sit in their seat and understand where they're coming from. That
Awesome.
would
I
be that
love
one.
that. I love that. Thank you. So, listeners, in the show notes, we'll have all the links for Keith and KL Scott and Associates. You can reach out to them. And some of you may be sitting back saying, well, he works with city government. He doesn't work with us. You know what? If you love your community and you want to help enhance and empower your community, go to your city leaders and tell them about KL Scott and Associates and let them know. So it may not be for you directly, but it can be for you indirectly as you impact your community. But Keith, it's been great to have you here, and look forward to continuing the conversation. And maybe I'll see you later this year back at the ICMA conference again.
Indeed, indeed. I think last time I had hair, so
Well, I haven't had that in a long time, but yeah. Well, it's been great to have you. Thanks a bunch for being on the Intentional Leader podcast.
likewise. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast presented by Reenergize Professional Coaching. Be sure to see the show notes for links to Reenergize Professional Coaching and links to contact our guests. Now, hit that subscribe button so that you are alerted with every new episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast.